And are live. Welcome everyone joining in to another edition of this week's AWE podcast. I'm Marc Ritter, joined by Christian Dominique. We are both the co-founders of AWE Digital Wellness, the world's first and foremost online platform for treating internet addiction. And Christian, today we have a very prescient topic that we are covering: the calm tech movement. And for anyone who's not aware of what the calm technology movement is, it's a design philosophy that aims to make technology blend more seamlessly into our lives instead of overwhelming us and creating constant distractions. So I'm just going to start off with a small statistic. So 74% of professionals report burnout symptoms, and 80% say that constant connectivity hurts their focus. And it's something that I experience in my day-to-day life. I used to work in the tech industry and was well aware of being inundated by distractions. But perhaps you can, offer a little bit of your experience and why is this such a strong issue nowadays, especially for people who work in tech, Christian?
Well, thanks, Mark, and thanks for sharing your insight. 74% share symptoms of burnout. I know quite a few people. It takes months, sometimes an experience I wish on anyone. But that is, just the worst case, right? So 3 out of 4 people are experiencing some symptoms, and maybe 10 to 15% will actually have a burnout, which is still a very high statistic. So what are the cause of that? Yes, I've been working remotely, sometimes as a digital nomad for many years. I know a lot of people who are doing, hybrid work or remote work, and there's no more boundaries between your work, your tech, and your life. So you might be working, constantly, or even if you're not working, your device is with you, so you're expected to be able to respond to messages. People are working at night, working on weekends, and they don't have this clear ability to not understand that there is a pause. I would describe it as like, generalized anxiety disorder is a mental health disorder, but there is an increased anxiety in the whole population. We know there are studies that show that tech use has increased anxiety and depression across the board. So even if it's moderate, any tech use increase by default anxiety and disorder symptoms and decrease attention and social connection, right? So those are some of the ideas that we've been bouncing around and figure out the science and the causes of what makes the tech world so hectic and anxiolytic. And we decided to kind of not put a pause, but at least put a little bit of more fun and calm in our daily practice, by creating those digital reset, which help people, reset not only their mind but their nervous system, to have a better ability to deal with their day's challenges, might it be work, but also relationships and personal creative goals.
So I'm glad you mentioned the digital reset. For anyone tuning in, we offer a digital reset Tuesdays and Thursdays. Tuesdays at 9 a.m. The Calm Digital Reset with me as your host. Last 30 minutes free. Check out our website if you would like to join. And Thursdays with Christian, 12 p.m. EST, the Happy Digital Reset, just to basically recalibrate the system. I'm really glad, I guess, in a morose sense, that you mentioned generalized anxiety disorder, and the correlation between the rise in generalized anxiety disorder, GAD, that you're seeing in people who do interface a lot with technology. It seems like technology has been built in a way that's the opposite with how human attention actually works. Right? The reason that anxiety disorder is increasing is because we are inundated with choice. and the choice does not equate to a freedom of choice necessarily. People find themselves being overwhelmed by the multitude of options that are being presented to them. You see dating, for example, right, with all the possibility of matching with somebody, right? How do I prioritize? How do I get things done? Do you feel like technology, as much progress as technology has brought today's day and age, do you feel like there are any productivity tools on the market right now that are helping mitigate the consequences of anxiety disorder that we are seeing on the rise?
There are some tools that are, used to help regain focus. There's a few apps out there. Some
Mm-hmm.
of them our team have tried, or other people that we know. They work to a certain degree. They can kind of help you um, be more aware. So again, AWE is awareness, wellness, and enjoyment. So we really always want to talk about awareness. The first step to any change or any amelioration is to be aware that there might be a problem or something that could be better. So some apps are helping in the awareness part, but they're not really helping in the behavior part, and they're definitely not working on the nervous system, right? So the app can actually give you more anxiety because you're becoming aware that you might have a problem, and then it's kind of giving a cycle of, well, did I spend too much time? Or so again, what we want to do in awe is to create awe moment where you don't have anxiety because you're so transcendent by this AWE moment that will lead you to, of course, we know that awe helps the mental state and also the body, right? So awe increase the immune function and lower stress. And so those are some things that we include also in our resets and in our technology to bring you back to positive, awe-inspiring moments.
Absolutely. Let's take a step back for a moment and talk about where the calm technology revolution really originated. It came from Mark at Xerox PARC in actually the 1990s, and he imagined that tech weaves itself into everyday life until it disappears. But in a sense, technology has become louder, faster, more demanding, more notifications, more pop-ups, and greater strain on a greater cognitive overload, I would say, for people to dissociate what is reality and what is just a notification appearing. Now we're seeing what the human cost is. Who actually recognized burnout as a workplace condition in 2019. And the global wellness economy hit $6.3 trillion alone in 2025. And people are buying more wellness, but they're feeling worse, right? What are some other possible factors that you think could be contributing to this?
Well, yeah, wellness industry is very vast, so that includes physical wellness, mental wellness. We can talk about some supplements in some case.
Mm-hmm.
So there are many factors, even dieting, so physical health. Um, the factors that we've noticed definitely are use of technology. When you talk about ComTech, and we want to bring back ComTech, and it's every kind of revolution or change or moving forward comes from a counterculture movement, right? So we know, for instance, that organic food came from having too much processed fat food, right? We know that minimalism came from people having too much stuff, right? Hey, how much stuff can you get? You can have so much stuff, and you can have it instantly, right? Click on a button, you get something in the same day or tomorrow, right? And then you just accumulate stuff. So minimalism came from too much stuff, organic food from too bad processed food, and then meditation, mindfulness also coming from too much attention. Comtech to me is kind of pushing back to is it possible that we have too much technology? We have one or two laptops, a tablet, two phones, and a TV, and we're getting bombarded everywhere, right?
Yeah, I'm really curious because technology is here to stay, obviously, right? And it's not going to leave anytime soon. And as much as people talk about like the advances in AI and all the cool devices on the market right now, we don't really understand the human cost. And I think key demographic where we see that human cost play out most is children, right, and adolescents, especially when they're given unmitigated access to the internet. Do you see any way that these this calm movement, this calm technology movement, could actually benefit children and adolescents as well?
Well, I think they're the one who are probably the most affected. Of course, some of them might not be working 50 to 60-hour job on their laptop, but they're also they have a brain that's learning, and they're from very young age learning this kind of technology rat race. And I know people above the age of 20 that they cannot watch a video that's longer than 6 seconds, right? So how are you going to learn anything if that's your attention span, right?
Yeah, it's kind of scary, right? And raising kids, that's called iPad parenting, right? And I think I mentioned this as well last time. I spoke with a psychiatrist friend of mine, and she is seeing an incidence of autism, along with raising children purely on iPads, because there's a very important period of socialization that happens in childhood cognitive development. And it's very important. Play is very important as well for children. But interfacing with your iPad and watching a video of a kid playing is very different than going out in the world and actually playing with other children. So we're seeing this play out, and no pun intended, play out in real time on children. The big cost we see is with remote work tech executives. In fact, I actually spoke to an executive recently who told me that she checks her phone before she's even really woken up in the morning, and her day starts with adrenaline even before she's woken up. And I mean, the average person swipes their phone over 2,600 times a day, and that's 2,600 micro activations of stress that you're essentially experiencing per day. It's crazy how we just take for granted the effect that technology is actually having on our physiology here, right? So speaking of physiology, I mean, you've done some preparation for this podcast, some research on the vagal nerve, vagus nerve, right? And it's something that's talked about a lot. Could you explain to us what is why is it so popular right now?
Sure. I just wanted to go one second back in terms of play. We are talking about children playing, but one of the most popular upcoming platform in the last few years, before TikTok, is Twitch, right? So just imagine that Twitch is mainly young people watching other young people play online,
Yeah.
right? But it is not the same as you going out and seeing the neighborhood kid and play fighting and figuring out and going in the forest or going in the park and creating new games and playing hide and go seek, right? So we're losing that for the children, which is an important part of socializing and brain development, right? You cannot have the same, watching someone online go through some levels of a game than actually playing, right? In terms of physiology, I studied physiology at McGill and neuroscience, and there is actually this interesting professor and lecturer of physiology at McGill University, Dr. Simon Cork, who mentions that there is a lot of hype in talking about the vagus nerve. And he says, for instance, that the most popular online videos, techniques to stimulate the vagus nerve are not based on scientific data, right? So there's a lot of misconception of what is the vagus nerve, how is it helpful or not. As you might know, Marc and myself are neuroscientists, and we try to incorporate the latest studies on everything that we do, and talk to scientists, psychiatrists, physiologists, to help you with all the fog of what can be found on social media. So, the vagus nerve is a very important nerve that goes from your brain all the way to your gut. It helps with the digestion, the rest, and relaxation. It helps you restore your system, including restoring your attention, right? So we're talking about what's going on with the digital media. People don't have attention, And if you know that there's a neuroscientist backed information that your nervous system will store that constant interaction with technology and you will have less and less attention. If you work to have methods, scientifically proven method to re-stimulate your vagus nerve, so to increase your vagal tone, you will be able to restore not only your health, your immunology, your digestion, but also your attention, right? So there's cognitive links as well to the vagus nerve. So it can increase your decision-making ability, your emotional regulation, and your attention. So what it is basically, this nerve is there to help you navigate, threat situation or coming through the amygdala and seeing, should we have fear, anxiety? Are we having a tiger? Are we having someone that's potentially dangerous in the wild or in business, or someone that wants something bad for us or make us bankrupt? I don't know what type of fear you might have, but people have those micro fear. And I think we talked about anxiety, right? So anxiety is unfocused fear. So you will have a fear that you don't know exactly what the exact fear it is, but it's kind of just bothering you, right? So that affects the cortisol in your brain, the stress, and also your vagal tone. So that will, let you be in a state of constant, oh, is there something wrong? Am I in danger, right? And one of the ways, actually, cognitively, and we can do that in the resets or in coaching or other place, is to help you understand that your anxiety is unfocused fear, and then we can focus it, finding what are you really fearful of? Do you know if there's something specific, or is vague? And vague Vegas, we can make it play on word, but the idea is when you have that information, then we can process that real fear, that exact precise fear, with your prefrontal cognition, and let it come down through your body, right? So you can use your mind to calm your body, or you can use your body to calm your mind as well. So that's what the vagus nerve is the brain-body kind of connection. And it is involved in the flight or fight system. So you might know the autonomous nervous system. Parasympathetic is for calm, and sympathetic is for more alert and vigilant. So that's the flight or fight system. But the vagus nerve is also involved in the freeze system, which is the worst type of fear, is when you're paralyzed, right? So panic attack and then actual paralysis. That it happened to me once, where you can't talk, you can't act, you're completely paralyzed. And when that happens to you, or even if it's mild fear or anxiety, you need to reset that, right? And hopefully you want to reset that before you get to the panic attacks, before you get to the freeze system, and then gauge where your vagus nerve is going. So there we can measure vagal tone. There's ways to measure how healthy your vagus nerve is. And there is a dorsal and ventral part of it. And you can also measure your heart rate variability. There's ways to see. So that means how quickly are you able to have a high stress situation, but come back to calm. So that's what it does. And it has, so we know, for instance, that studies with that confirm that low vagal tone gives you more depression, anxiety, and high vagal tone lets you deal with stress response much quicker. That's why, for instance, cold exposure is also one of the ways to help your vagal tone. So why is that? Well, you go into cold water, so it shocks your system, but then your body temperature compensates, and then you're ready to get more stress, and you can respond quicker to that, right? So that's one of the ways. Some people talk about diet, omega-3 fatty acids to help the vagus nerve. That hasn't been shown to be true from any scientific evidence. Some people also talk about massage. They want regular massage, or massage specifically the vagal nerve, but that also hasn't been shown yet with any scientific evidence. But what we tried to do in the digital reset, is give you a mental massage, right? So we can use words to give you a massage and to reset. And word has been used so meditation, mindfulness, other reframing exercise can help your vagal tone. And it's also to create the feeling of safety, right? So again, fear or anxiety, the calm and the reset, all those things are here to make you feel safe, so that your body can feel safe.
Thanks for that. And it's super interesting, the influence of vagal nerve on a lot of how we approach life, our mindset, perception of reality. You talked a lot about, what positively influences the vagal tone, including omega-3 fatty acids, massage, cold plunge. This is just a question that came up while you were talking, but what is it exactly about the way that we interface with technology that negatively affects the vagal tone, right? A lot of people, they sit in front of their computer all day, in this position, just staring at their laptop. What is it about that direct physiology that influences the vagal tone exactly?
Well, there is also exercise. We forgot. Right? There's many ways to. There's
Yeah.
books about it. We know a lot about science of many ways that you can influence your vagal tone. Some are science based, some are not. But breath work, so different breathing exercise, will activate. So physiological sigh, belly breathing, some types of ratio of breathing, or influencing that positively, as well as exercise, right? So what's the reverse of exercise? Is sitting on your desk all day, right? So people could use standing desk. People can go for a walk or a run or a jog or a swim. But negatively, of course, sedentarity, and also, so again, anxiety is something that's fear based and amygdala based, and that affects the vagal nerve, right? So when you have stressors and you don't deal with them, that affects negatively, right? If maybe you remember the 4 A's of my pathway to happiness. So one is awareness, second is acceptance, then it's appreciation and awe, right? So why is acceptance so important? Is because what is bad for your mental health and your vagus nerve is when you resist and when you avoid, right? So people
Hmm.
have their worries and they're procrastinating or they're avoiding or they're thinking that it's just going to go away, but they're not dealing it. So they're not resetting. They're just letting the nervous system be on high alert for a longer period of time. Then it becomes long. It takes longer for them to recalibrate, right? So avoidance is really a key, I would say, to
Hmm.
not having a healthy vagus nerve. And to not avoid, you have to take action. You have to proactively go to a place you might feel unsafe at certain point until you become safe again. And that's one of the things that we do in the research, is to not make you avoid, but make you aware and actionable. And of course, the other part is appreciation and gratitude, right? So many people know about the gratitude journal or how finding gratitude in your day. And in my book, I explained that gratitude is great. I will always recommend it. And appreciation is even better. So we can also do some appreciation techniques, some gratitude techniques, and that will give you back the calm with technology.
With technology. Yeah, so it's really interesting that you mentioned resistance and avoidance. We had a podcast guest from last week, Phil Ritter, on here from Flow Neuroscience, and he had a quote that really stuck with me, which was, if you're using a software technology and it's free, nothing in life is free. You are the product essentially, and the most valuable commodity on the place is attention. Nice. And so a
Yeah,
lot of these tech,
attention is the most valuable
go on.
commodity, as you're mentioning. And I'm also writing my third book, which is "Don't Be Authentic, Pay Attention." Right, so look out for that. We'll talk more about attention and about this fake craze of finding your true self or authenticity. That's not really helpful. Sorry, what was your question? You were cutting off, so I just picked up.
Oh, I apologize. So I was just saying that it seems like technology is rewarding us in a way for instant dopamine, instant gratification, which inadvertently causes us to avoid certain responsibilities, stressors, exams, just procrastinate in general, which is just making us have a much more adverse reaction to this.
Exactly. Avoidance, distractions, those are not the way that we'll be healthier and happier. But that's what, kind of the tech and social media and easy dopamine fix let us do very easily and too often, to our detriment, right?
Got it. So on the topic of techniques, technologies, methods
Yeah.
that can actually
So
help
there
help?
is some
Mhm.
medical ones as well. So we talked about the non-medical, non-clinical, but we, as you mentioned, we had a guest with some transcranial um,
Yeah.
stimulation. So there is some transcranial stimulation of the, not transcranial, it's not in the cranium, uh, of the vagus nerve. And those have been found. There is a study from Ma et al. It's a Chinese and Japanese group that are looking at the use of stimulation of the vagal nerve directly and showing some good result. Specifically, their study is looking at Alzheimer's and Parkinson patients, but we can imagine that could be used for many other situations. There is another study here from Blanco and Tyler, 2025, that looks at the vagus nerve in respect to sports. So
Mm.
using breath work and also stimulation of the vagus nerve to increase athlete performance in high level athletes, right? So vagus nerve has some real science based application, both with the non-medical ways that we talked about and also some medically approved tools and technology, right? So maybe that would be also a form of calm tech, which calms your vagus nerve with technology.
Could you tell us a little bit more about mm, what is EMDR and why is it useful as well here for addressing a lot of these problems?
So EMDR is rapid eye movement.
Hmm.
Um, it's a form of treatment specifically for trauma that was invented in California. There's a lot of practitioners around the world now that claim to be EMDR specialists. There were some courses. I like the concept. I like the idea. I think that there is some applications. I've talked to a lot of doctors, nurse people that have done it, received it. The consensus seems to be that it is a real technique that works. The problem is that it is, the protocol is quite specific, and if you do it wrong, it can, make things worse instead of making things better, right? So we don't want to recommend everyone to do EMDR if they don't know how or when or specifically, right? So I would not say that it's necessarily just linked with the vagus nerve, but of course it is linked with the nervous system and trauma. And the idea is that when you scan the horizon rapidly, it's like when you were back in the savannah or the jungle or the plains, and looking at the horizon kind of calms you down. So that's kind of why the technique works, and it works best right after you've had a trauma, right? So trauma is subjective, always is one event that someone can find traumatic and one not traumatic. And then if you found an event traumatic, then that will be passed down and incorporated in your nervous system. So EMDR is one of the techniques that can help you try to prevent it, that it stays long. So it's better to do EMDR right after an event, not wait for a long time, but you can also reprocess it later. There's also techniques of journaling for trauma. So there's many tools, but EMDR is one of them, which again I think is good, but you would have to be sure of what you're doing if you're doing it or receiving it. Um, so it may be a little bit of a hype on EMDR, but it is
Hmm.
effective.
Do you know how it actually is administered? Do they have people looking at images of a traumatic event, or how do they actually
No, so
administer it?
so so it is. Well, if normally the use case is the ER and nurse or ambulance even can perform that right after the trauma, and then it's kind of like we mentioned, letting them see in the horizon, so not in a closed room, like look through a window and then do the eye movement specifically that supposedly is the best to alleviate the system. You can do it also in a room, but it's better if you're doing it outside. And there is also some diverging protocol if you're going to do it much later. So that's why journaling can be useful. So are you going to remember the trauma, remember how it was felt, so you can write it down, or you can see pictures of something related? That I don't know the exact protocol, but it
Mm.
always has to do with getting the trauma relived and feeling safety with the elements that gave you the trauma.
Got it. Okay. So I think the key word here is trauma, and how do we avoid passing this on to other people, or right, stopping it, intergenerational trauma, right? And it's baked into our DNA essentially,
Well, we know
right?
that epigenetics, people from the war, the generations later. So that could be like in Germany, that could be also in South Korea, right? So you've experienced war. Your parents or grandparents have experienced war. Then your nervous system is more anxious just because you've had intergenerational trauma, but also trauma and hate and many negative emotions are contagious right now, right? So one thing that we've heard in the digital reset, people that had positive experience, they mentioned that it did not only affect them positively, it affected them, their family or coworkers or people around them, right? So as negativity is contagious, positivity also can be contagious, right? So if you're more calm, you're more present, then people around you feel that. And if you're more stressed and you feel that trauma, then your family and friends and coworkers will also feel that, right? So it's intergenerational, and it's also real time with the people around you. They will feel that.
Negativity bias is a real thing, and I think tech companies have started to exploit it as well. They realize that, things go a lot more viral through outrage, right? Pissing people off
Yeah,
causes a post to
anger,
get,
hate,
yeah.
division, of course. Yeah,
Man, I feel it as well. If I see like some outrage clickbait article, like I click on it immediately because I want to know, like it just gets me going. It seems like more of a conscious effort to engage in, the calm movement, feel good movement, and it takes a lot more mindful effort. What do you think here? Because I think outrage, negativity, it activates a lot of our more primal, immediate responses in the brain.
yeah. Calm can be a kind to boredom. Oh, I have to sit for 25 minutes to listen to some dude talk or to do nothing. No, I have only 6 seconds between his videos, right? So
Yeah.
it takes some effort, but once you do it, that's kind of the thing. You realize that our biology is made to have those calm moments, right? We cannot be on high alert, 6 seconds, 6 seconds, one more email, one more swipe, one more this notification, without this impacting us, right? It has to be conscious. And as you mentioned, not only the tech, but also the media companies have figured out long ago that there's always another war somewhere, a tsunami, a disaster, or something to be outraged about. Um, but there's very little reporting on, as there are some, but a science student in a high school that did something good for the world, right? How many of those do you see? And they pass for 5 minutes, and you don't watch them, right? No one remembers that, but is there a war going on in some country for many months? Every day we're going to hear about it. Is there something negative that happened in the politics or some scandal? Yeah, let's go for that. Let's be outraged. But I think we can also use the technology for good. We can use social media for good, and those are the type of discussion that we want to have with our team, our guests, our community, is to have those positive conversations.
It seems like we're talking about two spectrums here, though. We talk about like trauma, war on the one side, and also just of living in a highly industrialized society where we get instant dopamine gratification whenever we want it, right? And obviously, you don't want one or the other. It's kind of like you're describing Brave New World and 1984, the two dystopian realities. How do you find a balance between these two things?
I mean, of course, the key is balance. And is it realistic to find that we always have balance? No, I think balance should be something that comes back to equilibrium, right? Again, like the nervous system, we don't want to have no anxiety or fear. Then we would do nothing and die, right? We want to be able to have a high stress environment and then come back. We want to be able to have a low stress environment and then come back to middle or high, right? So we have this amazing body, nervous system, and brain that allows us to do that, right? But
Yeah.
most people are stuck either in too stressed or not doing enough, right? you need some positive stress. It's called actually a stress. So stress is good in general, but
Yes.
we don't want too much stress. That's the problem. Or we want constant stress for things that are shouldn't be stressful or scary, right? So that the balance is always a work in progress. So that's why I would say like it's a practice. It's a something that you should do every week, many times a week or every day. Even incorporate, we do 25-minute reset because we learned that 22, 23 minutes is the minimum optimum time to really get a real reset from your body system. If you do, we talked about non-medical, there's also some mats that you can use for your vagus nerve, or shoes with like some acupressure, and it's about 20 minutes as well that's recommended to really reset. Now, you can also do shorter resets, right? You don't have all the time 25 minutes or an hour or whatever. So maybe you can do 5 to 10 minutes in between something, and you just, at least mentally, maybe you won't get the full 25-minute experience, but we can start to incorporate that so that we are reaching balance more and more often in the day, in the week. And it's work. It's not going to come from watching random Instagram, TikTok, or YouTube videos. It's just not, right.
Yeah, I always say that you're not necessarily going to discover your breakthrough in a 6-second self-help video you found on TikTok, right? It's the process. It takes time. So we talked a little bit about mindfulness, right? For those watching who are perhaps unaware, what is mindfulness?
And yeah, we're doing those lives on the multi-platforms. So if you are in any of those platform and you have questions, we will try to respond to them in due time. So
Absolutely.
feel free to, don't be shy. We don't bite. Q&A in the chat. So what is mindfulness? Wow, very deep question. It's quite easy to understand. I also call it presence, right? That's one of my 8 Ps. So
Mm.
mindfulness, people sometimes find it too woohoo, or it can be connected with like meditation, and people have some bad ideas about, oh, I don't want to do something mindfully. Actually, you want to do everything mindful. Like that's basically the best thing you have is your attention, right? There's mindful sex, right? My colleague Lori Brotto wrote a beautiful book about mindfulness and sex, right? So you can have the best sex if you're mindful. You can have the best food, mindful eating. So mindfulness is everything. You can be mindful all the time if you don't want to be distracted. It's being present. It's being in the moment. That's the simple definition. And there's techniques for you to do that. Some are called meditation, and some are just exercise of taking an apple, looking at it, smelling it, eating it in a way that's mindful, and then,
Mhm.
oh, lo and behold, it's the best apple you've had, right?
So for anybody who perhaps doesn't have a direct experience with mindfulness meditation, again, we offer 2 weekly resets. That's a good introduction to mindfulness and mindfulness meditation. It's also what led us to build AWE, is to blend science, human connection, and digital awareness, and to help people reset their relationship with technology. We've seen people attending our sessions who've, they've slept better, they think more clearly, just because a lot of what we've been talking about, right? Resetting this vagal tone, right? And ultimately, that's what it takes, is realizing that the need to constantly address something in your environment, to have to ruminate about tasks, is what's causing you a lot of internal anxiety. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, very well said, Mark. And I say in some of my resets, just be there, right? It's about being, it's not about doing, right? And people forget to be, they just do, right? So we want to help you really be present, be in the moment. And the beautiful thing that we talked about, I forgot for the vagal tone as well.
Yeah.
Another thing, there's so many things, right? Social connections. Social connections will help your vagal tone be better, right? And we decided that we are not going to do what many others are doing, which is pre-recorded. You watch it at your own pace. we're going to give you set times for you, your
Hmm.
family, your teams, your community to come together, either with people that you know or with strangers, but asynchronously at the same time and with other people, right? So that's a
Yeah.
big thing that we figured out, is that people need to feel that we're doing something together, not just you and, oh, I'm going to procrastinate. No, we're doing it all together at the same time.
Yeah, one of my clients, he's had GAD, as a generalized anxiety disorder, and I asked him about his social life, and he said, "Yeah, I don't really have many friends," and he's working remotely in front of his computer all day, right? Imagine, if you're a business executive watching this and you manage a team, imagine what this is doing to your remote employees, somewhere across the world, and they're spending all day inside in front of their computers. Like, it's affecting their productivity. Salespeople, their performance slipping. Anyone is getting affected by this, right? And just taking a moment to recognize the influence, right? That can have a tremendous outcome in your performance if you're willing to just address this once and for all, right? And that's why we offer these resets for anyone really who's interested in understanding how does physiology really impact our cognitive performance here.
And we can geek out about neuroscience for days, Mark, uh, but it's very important for people to know that the advance of neuroscience in the last 25 years is incredible, and we can link so many things to the nervous system, so the vagus nerve, the brain, um, and people are not aware of that. So they think, oh well, I'm anxious, it's my fault, it's my brain. Oh, I cannot, it's my personality. It's like, no, it's based on the nervous system, and once you address that, that's going to help many things. And it's not a, some books say it's a superpower, and it's the, it's not. There's a lot of things that need to work together, but neuroscience is one of the keys to your happiness. So that's why I spent years to understand it, to help people be happier, healthier, to have better relationships, relationship with others, relationship with the world, and relationship with themselves, right? And that starts a lot. If your nervous system is deregulated and you don't know,
Yeah.
then everything else is going to be more difficult, right?
I had this image in my mind when you were talking earlier of like the cavemen, and there's like one caveman who's going out and he's hunting, right, for the food with the spear, and he's like being super active. And then there's like another caveman who's just sitting in the cave staring at the wall all day, right? Just looking, right? And obviously when we compare these two, we're like, the one who's looking at the wall is going to have issues. Yeah, the other one who's hunting for food, he might die of hunger as well or get impaled by something. But the guy staring at the wall all day, right? Nothing's going on. Or maybe he's looking at like shadows on the wall in front of him, kind of like the allegory of the cave with Plato.
Yeah.
But like, obviously he's going to have issues, right? If he's just staring at that and he's not willing to go outside into the real world. And I think it's very easy for us to point out the flaw in that example, but sometimes it's harder for us to realize that essentially we're staring at a rock already. Like, I'm speaking to you over the internet right now, but essentially my body thinks I'm just staring at a rock. I'm
Yeah.
just staring at an object that's not moving. And so, I'm sitting like this, and you can be sitting all day in that position, but if you're not exercising, if you're not doing a lot of, what you already mentioned is called to reset the vagal tone, uh, to address your physiology, it's having a profound impact that you might not even realize, right? For
Um,
anybody watching this.
yeah,
And
it's
and
it's correlated, right? And that's why, when we talk about wellness and well-being, our mission is to not omit any of those factors, right? It is your physical, it is your mental, it is also your relational, right? People forget, oh, me. Well, what about your relationship, right? With your family, with your coworkers? Why are we
yeah.
not talking about that? Why, with your community? Why are people so isolated, right? So all those things holistically include, what well-being and wellness is. Right?
So I think at AWE, we recognized early on that sometimes it's not just a discipline problem, right? These algorithms have been engineered in a way to be as addictive as possible. So part of what we've done is not, we go a certain way with the digital resets, but we've actually gone the extra mile by designing software and hardware itself that's meant to encourage you to get the outcomes that you want in your life. For example, the AWE phone that we've developed actually encourages you to take physical actions, right? Put your phone down on the table and reward you for that behavior rather than an app blocker on your phone that you could just remove at any time, right? That's going to be very helpful for children, especially for teams, for remote teams, right? It goes beyond the simple mantras of telling yourself to focus harder and it's just a discipline problem. No, it actually encourages you to take actions and to do things to get the outcomes that you want in your life.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. I'm also proud of our smarter phone that just came out, and it's going to help a lot of parents and kids worldwide with this new generation that might not have the tools. And like you said, it's not a willpower. The phone that most parents are buying their kids are, designed to make them mindless, not good at school, not socially interacted, and probably fat and bad eyesight. So those
Yep.
are the phone that people are getting to their kids, right? So we
Yep.
were conscious of that and wanted to create something better, and use technology for calm, for good, for connection, as you mentioned.
Yep. I think I've mentioned this to you before, but the way that we look back on smoking junk food, right, is how we're likely to look back on our use of social media nowadays. And I think we're becoming more and more aware of it. But it might be that the negative consequences are just not as immediate from social media as they would be from junk food or smoking or drugs, for example, that we don't take it that seriously. So if you're a parent watching this, recognize that it's likely that, you know, I can understand a parent's desire to be in constant communication with their kid and to be worried about where they might be at any time. But that does not mean you need to throw the baby out with the bathwater. You don't need to give them a a smartphone device that has that carries with it TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, all these other addictive apps that can have long-term consequences on your children, right? There's devices that have been designed for you to communicate regularly with your kids while also avoiding uh, all of the addictive potential that technology has for the children.
Well, the phone is scientifically proven with some studies, has some
Oh
patents,
yeah,
is approved medically, and the goal of the phone is to give positive reinforcement, and avoid parent conflict, right? So, how many parents have had to tell their kids for the 20th time, don't be on your computer, don't be on your phone when we need to do something, or go to bed and don't watch social media at night.
yeah.
Countless, right?
So I had a client once, and he had a porn addiction. He was also a software developer. So I encouraged him to download some apps on the phone and on the computer to block pornographic websites. Well, you know what he did when he got the urge? He just found some way to uninstall the apps. Even if these apps claimed that they were uninstallable, he's a software developer and he knew exactly, how to go into this operating system and get rid of them. The thing is that these apps work until they don't, and that's because the operating system, they're still running on a certain operating system that allows you to have control over them. Again, this is not such a subtle plug for our own phone. There's a lot of other devices on the market you could try out. The thing about the AWE phone is that we've designed the operating system so that you cannot uninstall the software, right? It prevents people from getting in the way of themselves. And that's something that a lot of people have seen value from. They see value from choices being taken away from them, about unfocused fear of anxiety. Sometimes you need to take choices away from people from them to be happier.
Great. Um, and again, the idea of the phone and the reset is to bring back, for everyone who doesn't know what we're doing yet, uh, bring back real connections, right? It is unfortunate that you're not here in Montreal, and we're not hugging and laughing in person, but this is as real connection as we can from across the world today. But we are here with a live audience. We have a team that's helping us produce and prepare for this, and we're creating real connections every day with people we talk to. I'm really proud of the team that we've built. Help us make a difference, and we are being told every day, thanks guys for what you're doing. So I want to thank you again, Marc, for being a leader in this crazy team of ours that have gone so far, with some explosive growth, new products, new projects, and lively talks like this on Fridays. I always love it.
I've really enjoyed the journey, Christian, that we've both been on, and the point that we've gotten to. And speaking of human connection, again, if there's anybody in the chat watching on all these platforms that would like to drop a question, please do so in the chat with us now. Christian, is there anything that you wanted to add in terms of the contact movement? We've covered a lot of different areas. We've covered physiology, how to reset the vagal tone, some of the useful technologies on the product, including some of those from AWE. Is there anything else that you wanted to add to the conversation today?
Well, yeah, we were reading through the comments of the people who have gone through the reset. And then, some person mentioned that she cried and hugged her kids after that. So I'm really happy that it connects with people and make them see the world in a better way. And I think that's, crying is one of the things that you can have when you have awe. You can have piloerection, and yes, it's not sexual. It's having goosebumps, and then you can also cry, right? So yeah, we're actually having awe experiences to some people that have enjoyed the resets, and increased sleeps, better mood, all those things is what we aim to. And yeah, we'd love your feedback if you attend any of them, to see how it affected you. And even if it's, for whatever reason you don't find it perfect, let us know how to make it better. But we've had 95% plus very positive response so far. So happy that we're launching a bigger series, Tuesdays and Thursdays, as mentioned. Besides that, we have a lot, this month. We'll be in two conferences in Vancouver and San Diego. If you're in those areas and you want to see our science team, please make sure to let us know, and you can see our posters and 12-minute talks there. And thanks again to the science team for working so hard and making those advances in AI and behavior and psychology. I think that's it for me. I guess my last question for you, Marc, is, where do you want to see this calm tech movement going in the next year or two?
It's a good question. I think we're already seeing society move in a positive way. I think people are becoming more aware of the consequences of digital overload, digital use. I would love to see this move in a direction where attention is not directly monetized. I see this as one of the fallbacks with a lot of the apps that are on the market right now. But I think what we're doing, raising a lot of awareness around this issue is the first step. Love to get to a point where we don't have invasive technology, where we're not necessarily selling biometric data to companies in order to help market to us better. And that we just become more aware of, if something seems free, what are we offering really? What, if we're the product, what is it that we're giving up, essentially? And so just building awareness around this. For anybody watching, Christian, where can people find more about these digital resets that we offer?
So it's on our website at www.awedigitalwellness.com, and just register for your free reset, and you'll get the chance to hear either Marc or myself. We might have other guests in future resetters in the future, as we're rolling out to more organizations and people. But now it's just Marc and me, so you get to chat with us or listen us in live on those resets. And I have questions for the audience if you didn't have some for us. So maybe you can think about this as we're rolling into the weekend. what's one digital habit that you'd like to change, right? So it all starts with one thing. So is there one thing that you would like to change? If you want to answer on the chat, you might be able to do that, and feel free. So is there one digital habit you'd like to change? And then what's the hardest part about disconnecting? We're trying to help people disconnect, reset, but we know it's challenging. So if you want to share or think about this for yourself, what's the hardest part about disconnecting? And if you're watching after the live and it's still streaming, you can also comment on the after live, and our team will respond. And if you're in an organization or you're a decision maker, if you're on our LinkedIn live, where could your organization start weaving calm in the culture? Those are my questions.
Perfect. I think that's a great point to end on. Christian, thank you again so much for your time and for your wisdom. I always appreciate speaking with you. Join us next time as well, not just next Tuesday or Thursday for our resets, but next Friday. We'll be hosting another podcast weekly on Fridays. Please tune in, and we'll see you again in the next stream. Take care, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day and your weekend.
Thanks, Marc. Have a good weekend, everyone.
Bye-bye.